Next, we have Eddie Ulmer. Eddie Ulmer is currently finishing his PhD in gerontology, studying the influence of minority stress on loneliness in older LGBT adults. He is also a member of the City of Vancouver Seniors Advisory Committee. Welcome, Eddie. Oops.
Thank you for the welcome. I might be a bit muddled this afternoon because I was up late watching the election results, so I'm to the very bitter end. So today I'm going to talk about social appearance anxiety, which is a new concept that's receiving a lot of attention in research, as it should, considering how physical appearance and attractiveness play a key role in how we perceive other people and ourselves and how we feel about ourselves. So a little outline. I'm going to talk about what social appearance anxiety is, the relevance to sexual minority men in particular, possible age patterns, age associations with appearance anxiety. I'm going to introduce the current study, talk about the sample, the instruments, the analysis. Results, talk about a few implications, and then end with some strengths and limitations. So social appearance anxiety is basically anxiety about being evaluated negatively for your overall physical appearance. Now, this is a little different from other constructs because it's not specific to any one particular body region or any quality. So it's not specific to physique or muscularity or body fat or body shape, which a lot of the studies using sexual minority men have focused on. There haven't been too many studies that evaluate appearance more holistically, which is unfortunate because usually when we judge people on appearance and when we judge ourselves as a whole, not bits and pieces. So the relevance to, what is the relevance of this construct? Well, in heterosexual people, we know that it's associated with many negative health outcomes, including body image dissatisfaction and disordered eating. And therefore, it may be of particular relevance to sexual minority men, who we know have higher levels of body image dissatisfaction, eating disorder symptoms, and who also have greater drive for muscularity, and all that goes along with that, including excessive exercise, steroid use, and so on. So how might age be associated with social appearance anxiety? Well, one dominant theory, or popular theory, starts with the premise, or I would say actually a fact, that men of all sexual orientations, gay men, straight men, tend to place a premium on physical attractiveness and youth, certainly more so than women. And as a result, so it goes, that age-related changes in appearance might be associated with increased physical appearance anxiety over time. And this is often cited as a reason why older gay men have a difficult time with, supposedly have a difficult time with aging. And this has sort of caught on in the popular press, and many articles have been written about the woes that older gay men face, and they tend to focus on appearance. I don't know if anybody knows that a few years ago there was a therapist in New York. He died by suicide just as he had finished writing a book, or was in the process of writing a book about gay men at midlife. And it had quite a bit of stuff in there about physical attractiveness and appearance and the struggles that he and other gay men have with appearance. And when he died, there was all sorts of articles written about this and focusing on this particular topic. So there's great interest in appearance anxiety, particularly as it relates to age. Related to this is the ongoing discussion about the way that older people, which is basically anybody older than 18, is treated online, and particularly on the dating apps and these location-based apps. And I love collecting these. These are from this website, Douchebags of Grindr. And it's a collection of insulting profiles. And I noticed there are quite a lot of them related to age. And so we have this one on the right who says, "No grannies," even though he's 33. So I can only imagine, if somebody who's 40 must be a great granny to him. Well, we have a 42-year-old who also criticizes older people and specifically criticizes what he believes to be sort of flaws in their appearance related to age. And so it goes that as men, are exposed to these images and they see the kinds of attitudes that people have towards aging, that it's going to affect how they perceive their bodies, or their appearance more generally. Conversely, it's also possible that with age, sexual minority men and people in general become more comfortable with their appearance. And there are a few studies that show there's a negative relationship between age and a drive for muscularity in particular, but there haven't really been any studies that examine the relationship between overall appearance and age. So I embarked on this little study, just based on some data I'm collecting for my dissertation. This is not the main part, but I've just collected some questions on this topic because I'm interested in it. Most studies have used very small samples with a restricted age range. So you have people from 18 to maybe like 50-ish. So it's kind of some more midlife people. And they've been focused on one country, and often like one particular city. So they've been a little restricted in their diversity. The current study addresses these limitations. It uses a very large, pretty large sample, a global sample with men aged 18 to 88. Basically, I just aim to determine, is there an association between age and appearance anxiety? And if so, what might account for that relationship? So a bit of an exploratory study. So I had about 4,000 men, sexual minority men, English men who indicated that they can understand English, from 75 countries. And they were drawn from a larger sample of 11,000 people, gay and straight, male and female. And it's basically part of a larger study on sexual orientation and mental health. Again, the men were aged 18 to 88, average age of 36, and I recruited them over 3 months, mostly over Facebook. And I'm sure I'll be criticized for that, but I actually enjoy using Facebook and find it quite useful for reaching hard-to-reach sexual minority people, and I actually ended up with a very diverse sample as a result. The responses were submitted anonymously on a website hosted on the Qualtrics survey, using the Qualtrics survey software. So by way of demographics of the sample, most of the people identified as exclusively gay, but I had a healthy sampling of people who identified as mostly gay, bisexual, queer, and then pansexual or polysexual. Most of the people were white, but I had over 30% of the sample non-white, which I think is a little better than some other studies, and so I was able to explore some differences by ethnicity. Most people were from North America, but again, 36% were from North America, but the majority were not, and that was, I did that deliberately. Facebook targeting ads using Facebook is very helpful for that. About 60% of the people were from urban regions, and the rest were either in a suburban or a smaller region, and about half of them had a partner, and the other half were not partnered. In terms of income, I asked people, because it's a global sample, I didn't ask them how much money, what their average annual income is. I just asked them, how easy is it for you to afford your monthly expenses on a scale of 1 to 7, 7 being very easy, and people were sort of in the middle. In terms of education, I asked for a number of years of formal education, and the average was about 16. And so it's it's usually about a college level. So it's a pretty educated sample, and this is quite common with research on sexual minorities. So what are some of the scales I used? Well, the main one is the Social Appearance Anxiety Scale, and this is a 16-item scale, and it basically asks people various questions about their appearance and asks people to rate them. And so one example is, I get tensed when it is obvious that people are looking at me. I'm afraid that people will find me unattractive. I get nervous when talking to people because of the way I look. And the scale has quite good reliability, as it should, because it has 16 items. I also measured outness, and I used this new scale called the Nebraska Outness Scale, and what it does, it asks people how many people they think are aware of their sexual orientation. So that would encompass people who they've told about their sexual orientation, and also people to whom they've kind of hinted that they might be gay without actually telling them. And then I also measure concealment. How much do you actively conceal your sexual orientation from friends, from family, from neighbors, and some other groups? Those scales are reliable. I use the personal homonegativity subscale of the IHI inventory, which is quite well used, particularly among sexual minority men. And I also use a 3-item acceptance concerns subscale, which basically asks people how comfortable they are with other people knowing about their sexual orientation. So one example is, I can't feel comfortable knowing that others judge me negatively for my sexual orientation, or I think a lot about how my sexual orientation affects the way that people see me. And it's quite a high alpha for 3 items. So And I also asked about people's experiences of harassment and discrimination, both in the last 12 months and also growing up. And I had a measure of how involved people are in the LGBT community, so how many gay friends they have, how often they hang out in LGBT clubs and bars and whatnot. Also how accepted they feel by the gay community itself. And I asked 2 more questions, how often they view LGBT pornographic websites, and also how often they use Grindr and Scruff. That's of relevance to this topic. So I basically did a hierarchical linear regression, and this involves entering sets of variables into 3 blocks. And in the first block, I put in the age, which is the main variable, and then some control demographic control variables. Then I looked at the influence of social network and media factors, and then I put the minority stress factors in this internalized homonegativity and discrimination in the last block. And the purpose of this was to try to understand whether any of these variables affected or accounted for any relationship that might exist between age and appearance anxiety. And I also added some interaction terms to see if the relationship between age and appearance anxiety is similar by region, geographic type, smartphone use, or amount of pornography viewing. So this is the fun part here. So if we look at the first block, we see that there's a modest negative correlation between appearance anxiety and age. So this is the good news part of the findings. It is not true that as people get older, they become, horribly focused on appearance and horribly despondent about it. In fact, there's a modest decline in appearance anxiety with age, so that's a good thing. It demonstrates a certain sense of resilience among sexual minority men, especially considering the kind of environment they're exposed to online. If we take a look, partnered people were slightly less likely to be concerned about their appearance, perhaps because they're not in the market looking for partners, or perhaps their partner provides support and encouragement about their appearance. There was a small relationship in terms of region. People in Western regions were slightly less likely to be concerned about their appearance, although it's such a small coefficient, I don't even feel like interpreting that. People who had a little more money were happier with their appearance. I don't know, perhaps people with money can afford haircuts or makeup or nice clothes or whatever. So in the second block, what I did is I added the gay community involvement, community acceptance, and the app and pornography use. Gay community involvement had a small relationship with appearance anxiety. So the more involved you were with the gay community, you were slightly more likely to be concerned about your appearance, which isn't too surprising because you're exposed to other gay men and everyone's judging everyone. However, if you're particularly accepted by the gay community, that sort of acts like a bit of a buffer, and so that helps to reduce appearance-based sensitivity. And there was very small, negligible correlation with basically no relationship between pornography use and appearance-based anxiety. And this is, I found a similar non-relationship in another sample that I used, and this is quite similar in other studies I found. I don't know why this is. It could be that everybody is exposed to pornographic images and images of beautiful people, and they've just become desensitized. I really don't know. It could very well be that there just is no effect on appearance anxiety. But anyway, that block of variables didn't really explain any relationship between age and appearance anxiety. And so in the final block, I added the minority stress factors. And there are 4 that were positively associated with appearance-based anxiety. So experiencing harassment, either in the last 12 months or while growing up. And also higher levels of internalized homonegativity, feeling bad about yourself for being gay, and also having concerns about anxiety about being accepted for being a gay person. And what I found was that the correlation between age and appearance anxiety was reduced by about half when I included those variables. And when I dug in a little deeper, it appears that that decrease is due to decreases in internalized homonegativity and gay-related acceptance concerns with age. So, thank you. So social appearance anxiety appears to be modestly correlated with age, and it decreases rather than increases. So this is a good news story. And we see a similar, oh, I forgot to mention, there were some significant interactions, but the effects were so small that I didn't even include them in the model. And so I can pretty well say that there's a similar pattern a similar relationship between age and appearance rejection, appearance anxiety, independent of the region the person's living in, the geographic type, or exposure to a sexually explicit material. And again, the decline may be due to declines in gay-related acceptance concerns and feeling better about yourself for being gay. And why might this be? And I really don't know why, but I'm guessing that one of the reasons could be as people feel, if you don't like yourself for being a gay person, it could sort of bleed into other parts of your life, and you can just sort of end up hating everything about yourself, including your appearance. And as you get older, that tendency sort of wears off, and so you see a decline in appearance-based concerns. It could also be that there's something about appearance that a person thinks perhaps advertises their sexual orientation to other people, and so if they're uncomfortable with their sexuality, they're going to be concerned about their appearance, and as they become more comfortable with their sexuality over time, then there's a decline in how much they care about appearance because they're not concerned about their sexual orientation as much. And another possible reason is just that people mature with age. And what I found in this study when I looked at the straight people, I did a little digging, and I found that for gay people and straight people, male and female, as people aged, they became more comfortable with their appearance. However, interestingly, gay men at all ages continued to have greater levels of appearance concerns relative to heterosexual men. And some of this might be related to also to socio-emotional selectivity. I don't know if people know about that theory, but the idea is basically as you become older and you become aware that your years on this earth are dwindling, you tend to focus on more positive experiences and positive relationships and less on negative emotions and negative thoughts about yourself. So these findings highlight the resilience of sexual, or suggest the resilience of sexual minority men, and they counter the negative portrayal of aging as a time of emotional distress. And they also suggest possible avenues for improving, reducing appearance anxiety by fostering acceptance of one's sexual orientation. A few strengths. This was a fairly large sample. I had people of every type. I had priests, I had lawyers, I had astronauts, I had hairdressers, I had everybody. Measured many different variables. I should note this is not a longitudinal study. I didn't follow the same people over time, so there could be something different about the older people in the sample. Maybe when they were growing up, they didn't care so much about looks, and that didn't form a really big part of their psychology. Although I think that if there is any cohort effect, it would be in the other direction, because people who haven't been so concerned about their appearance when they're young, as they age, and they see declines in their appearance or perceived declines in their appearance, they might not know how to cope with that. And there's some interesting research with older men, heterosexual men and women, and they find that older women cope better with changes in their appearance than men do. And the idea being that because women are constantly exposed to judgments from men about their appearance, they can cope a little better with their appearance. As I mentioned, I used Facebook to recruit participants, but I think the benefits of using Facebook outweigh the costs. This is not a random sample, but most LGBT studies don't use random samples, and as we saw yesterday with the poll results from the elections, it doesn't really seem to matter if you use a random sample to deduce conclusions. There may have been some language barriers. I did have quite a few people from Asian countries and Latin American countries, and a lot of people from the Philippines. They love to fill out the survey. I don't know why. But I did check for language barriers. I looked at the reliability, internal consistency of the answers to the questionnaires, and they were all quite consistent, which suggested that people they weren't responding randomly, and they did understand the content of the questions. And finally, this was a sample of self-identified sexual minorities. The results might be different from people who are gay but who don't openly identify. I do have those people in this sample. I haven't yet into those details. But yeah, that's about it. So it's life is not that bad as you age. So,